This happened before cell phones, back when being home alone actually meant being alone. If something went wrong, you had the house phone, maybe a neighbor if they were awake, and that was really it. I was 16 or 17 and my parents had gone out for the evening. The house was quiet except for the television playing in the living room. It was one of those ordinary weekends that blur together after enough years pass. Forgettable, I guess, is what I'll call it. I finished a snack in the kitchen, turned off the lights room by room, and got ready for bed. Before heading upstairs, I let our golden retriever Buddy outside for his final bathroom break of the evening. Now, Buddy was the friendliest dog I've ever known. He loved everybody. Neighbors, delivery drivers, even strangers walking down our street. It didn't matter. He'd greet them all with a wagging tail and a goofy grin. In all the years we had him, I never once even heard him growl. Not at people, not at animals, not even when another dog would steal his food. There wasn't a single aggressive bone inside this dog's body, no killer instinct whatsoever. So I let him outside and he trotted down the back porch per usual. Then, out of nowhere, he suddenly stops and I heard a low rumble. At first, I initially thought that another dog had wandered into our yard or something. I quickly would realize the sound was actually coming from Buddy. He stood completely rigid, staring toward the bushes that lined up in the back fence. His hackles were raised, his head was low. I've never seen him like this before. "Buddy," I called out. He didn't respond or react. The growl actually deepened. I stepped to the edge of the porch and looked off into the darkness. The bushes shifted slightly in the wind, but I couldn't see anything unusual. But then after that, Buddy explodes. He lunges forward, barking aggressively, complete and total pure alarm. It wasn't a normal bark either. It sounded really aggressive, like he was trying to keep something away from our house. My stomach immediately tightened up. Maybe it was a raccoon, a stray cat, but that didn't really make sense. Buddy loves cats. He probably wouldn't have invited a burglar inside if one offered him a treat. I'm being totally serious too. The more I stared at those bushes, the more convinced I'd become that somebody was hiding there. The neighborhood was quiet, no passing cars, no other neighbors outside, just Buddy standing guard at the edge of the yard. "Come here, Buddy," I yelled, but he ignored me. I called again, getting the same reaction. For several more minutes, I stood there on the porch trying to convince myself that I was overreacting. The logical part of my brain kept insisting there was probably an animal in those bushes. The other part kept imagining somebody crouched back there watching the house. I looked toward the neighboring yards, hoping to see a porch light click on or maybe somebody taking out the trash, but there was nothing, nobody. Every house around looked like they were already asleep. Meanwhile, Buddy refused to back down. He would bark furiously, stop for a second and listen, and then start growling again. Whatever this was had his full attention, and it didn't seem to be moving much or leaving. Finally, I go back inside and grab the biggest kitchen knife that we owned. Looking back, it was kind of ridiculous, but at the time it felt better than walking into the dark completely empty-handed. When I stepped back onto the porch, Buddy was still there, barking nonstop. I tried calling him once more and still nothing. Then he turned his head and barked directly at me. It wasn't threatening, if that makes sense. If anything, it felt like a warning, like he was telling me to go inside. Looking back now, I should have listened. Instead, I started down those steps. Buddy paced back and forth between me and the bushes, barking and growling. My heart was hammering so hard, I could feel it in my throat. I gripped that knife tightly in my hand. The yard suddenly felt larger than it ever had before, too. Every step I took seemed to be louder than I wanted it to be, and I kept expecting something to burst out of the darkness. As I got closer, I started hearing this faint rustling sound. Plastic. That was all it was. Plastic moving in the wind. And I felt really stupid in the moment. A grocery bag had snagged on one of the branches, was fluttering softly in the darkness. Relief hit me so hard that I almost laughed. There was nobody hiding in the bushes. Buddy was just being an idiot. "Oh my God," I muttered. "Buddy, seriously? It's a plastic bag, man." I stood there for a second or two shaking my head. The whole thing was ridiculous. Here I am standing in the backyard with a kitchen knife because my dog had declared war on litter. but Buddy kept growling. I took another step and the bag lifted. Not from the wind, it rose straight upward. Every bit of relief that was there had now vanished completely. The top of the bag cleared the bushes, then I saw fingers gripping it. And for a second my brain refused to process what I was actually looking at. A hand appeared, then an arm. Then a man slowly stood up from behind the hedge. He'd been shrouded in leaves and shadows. I don't know how long he'd been crouched there for, 5, 10 minutes, an hour? Who knows? All I did know was that he'd been hiding a few feet from my back porch while I was alone inside that house the whole time. He had a black hoodie, black pants. I couldn't make out his face in the darkness. He simply just stood there, holding that stupid grocery bag while Buddy barked like he'd lost his mind. The man looked directly at me and nobody moved. I was frozen. Then Buddy charged the fence, teeth bared. The man sprang into motion. He climbed over the fence in this smooth movement and dropped into the alley behind our property. I backed away so fast I nearly fell onto the porch steps. Buddy was there still, throwing himself against the fence, barking harder than I've ever heard. I watched through the gaps in the fence and the man didn't run. And I guess that really was the creepiest part. He just kind of walked away. He definitely knew the area. Getting caught didn't seem to bother him at all. Halfway down the alley, he glanced back once over his shoulder and I still couldn't see his face. He continued walking until the darkness just swallowed him up. Eventually, I grabbed Buddy by the collar and dragged him inside. The second the door slammed shut, I locked it and every single window in the house and called my parents. The police would come later and search the yard, and they'd find footprints behind the bushes and signs that somebody had indeed climbed the fence, but they never identified who it was or why he'd been there. Nobody in the other neighborhoods had reported seeing anybody. Nobody knew who he was either. For years after this, people laughed when I told them the story because it starts with a golden retriever growling at a grocery bag. I've never laughed because Buddy was not growling at the bag. He was growling at the man that was holding it.